There can be no doubt that the Githyanki will be playing a very large role in Baldur's Gate 3. Numerous pieces of evidence point to this, even in early access. The first scene shown is Githyanki dragon riders chase an Illithid nautiloid, the presence of the companion Lae'zel, an artifact of Githyanki origin, as well as an encounter with the Githyanki patrol that already takes place in early access. But what about another possibility? What of the possibility of the presence of the Githzerai? Whilst there is as yet no firm evidence for this, and I must admit that this is confined to the realm of speculation, there could be a very good reason as to why the Githzerai could have some role or make an appearance in Baldur's Gate 3. But before going there, you must first understand what and who both the Githyanki and the Githzerai are, and later why the Githzerai might partake in the story of Baldur's Gate 3. The origins of both the Githyanki and Githzerai are shrouded in mystery. Some sources speculate that they were simply humans untold millennia ago, but no one truly knows. The one thing that is known is that the Gith race were once slaves to the Mind Flayers, or Illithids, in a time far removed from the present. If they had been human, the centuries of servitude and possible experimentation permanently changed both their appearance and their abilities to a degree where they could never be mistaken for human or even demi-human, leading to a yellow-greenish to brownish skin tone and pale, stretched-over features, angular faces, flattened noses, pointed ears, and an overall gnarled appearance. Evidence against a human origin is the fact that the Gith race lays eggs instead of giving birth to live young, but this might be the result of Illithid intervention. Either way, their ultimate origin is not known, and in many ways, one could claim that the Mind Flayers have made the Gith what they are today regardless. What is known, however, is that after countless generations of slavery and servitude, the Gith race launched a successful rebellion against their Illithid masters, who at the time possessed a multi-world spanning empire. This became possible because of psionic resistance that had been developed over time against Illithid powers, as well as the development of their own psionic abilities, something that likely occurred due to centuries of enslavement and proximity to the Mind Flayers. During this time, a leader came to prominence whose name was Gith, and she was the first among them to lead the Illithid thralls against their masters. It is likely from this name that the Gith race takes their own name. Gith united most of her race under her banner, and she thus began the overthrow of her former masters. Although used to minor rebellions and occasional dissidents, they were simply not prepared for an upheaval of this scale. The psionic resistance, as well as abilities the Gith had developed, proved invaluable. In unison, and under the guidance of their fanatical leader, the Gith rose up and struck an irreversible blow against the Illithids, sowing mayhem and chaos in the Illithid Empire, bringing it to its knees. But Gith, the leader, wanted more, and insisted on the wholesale slaughter of all Illithids to the last, whereupon the Gith themselves could forge a new empire and rule over the multiverse. But not all Gith wished to follow her plan of war and conquest. A dissident Gith, bearing the name Zerthamon, rose to the fore, voicing strong disagreement and opposition to the plans of Gith. Zerthamon maintained that waging war and forging an empire would lead to the destruction of the Gith people. He believed that the Illithids had already been so thoroughly defeated that continued conflict would only lead to degeneration and a lack of distinction between the Gith and their former masters, in terms of their character and ethics. Instead, he suggested that it was time for the Gith to learn about themselves, develop their culture, garner wisdom, and seek after harmony and unity. Gith, however, was not having it, and this fundamental philosophical difference between Gith and Zerthamon led to a brutal civil war amongst their ranks. Zerthamon was unfortunately killed during this civil war, and his faction fled in defeat to the plain of Limbo, led by one Menyar Og. Nonetheless, Gith's forces were devastated as well, and her faction fled to the Austral Plain, with the intention of regrouping, strengthening, and preparing themselves for the conquest of the entire multiverse. They became known as the Githyanki. Gith herself later ventured into the Nine Hells and struck a bargain with Tiamat, the goddess of evil dragons, disappearing in the process, but giving the Githyanki some kind of dominion over red dragons. Vlaakith I and her descendants were decreed to rule in Gith's stead until her return, and the current Vlaakith rules over the Githyanki as a lich. The Githzerai, as the followers of Zerthamon would come to be known, trod a very different path indeed, often further pursuing their psionics, or perhaps more famously pursuing the way of the monk, going on to establish monastic orders dedicated to harmony and contemplation. The contrast the Githzerai provide with the Githyanki might be summarized by a Githzerai monk by the name of Adaka Fellhand. Under the Illithids, we in the Githyanki fought and died across 1,000 worlds for implacable masters. Under Vlaakith, our kin fight and die across 1,000 worlds for an implacable master, and they call that liberation. This is indicative of the strong pull that the Githzerai feel towards freedom, which one might argue led them to the plane of absolute chaos limbo in the first place. And yet simultaneously they sought out order, harmony, and peace, which is why when you look out at the landscape of total chaos that is limbo, Githzerai settlements and fortresses appear as anomalies upon the landscape, with their well-ordered structure and flow. On limbo, the Githzerai use their natural psionic abilities to create cities and massive adamantine fortresses out of the chaos of the plane. Powerful Githzerai called anarchs maintain these structures. In this sense, Githzerai strive to create a balance between personal freedom and order and loyalty among their people. Harmony, peace, and discipline are the primary cultural precepts of the Githzerai, in stark contrast to the Githyanki. Beyond Limbo, the Githzerai also have a foothold in the Underdark in the form of outposts, in particular in a region called Old Shanatar, which is a region that stretches for hundreds of miles beneath Faerun. They have established these outposts to observe Illithid and Githyanki activity, respectively. And now on to why the Githzerai might make an appearance in BG3. The main reason is that Githyanki and Githzerai, by dint of history and profound cultural differences, are blood enemies. They despise each other, and we do not fully yet grasp the role of Githyanki in the context of Baldur's Gate 3, but it's not unreasonable to assume that they will play a large role, due simply to the presence of Lae'zel as a main character or party member, and it is consequently entirely possible that the Githzerai will want to oppose any plot the Githyanki might be hatching. And on top of that, the Githzerai loathe the Illithids as much as the Githyanki do, and it is always in their interest to keep tabs on Illithid activity. It is for this reason that the Githzerai maintain outposts in the Underdark in the first place. Given that we do not fully understand the machinations of the Githyanki or the Illithids, it would be in the best interest of the Githzerai to maintain vigilance. More hypothetically, most Githyanki are dogmatic in the extreme, and Lae'zel is a perfect example of this. At least initially, Githyanki are indoctrinated into what is effectively a religion, so one could envision an encounter possibly with Githzerai that could turn her away from her chosen path, or perhaps even a Githzerai intervention that could aid the party against either the Mind Flayers or the Githyanki, and this seems to me the most likely scenario that entails Githzerai involvement. Finally, I would be remiss if I did not mention the most famous CRPG Githzerai of all time, Dakon, who appeared in Planescape Torment as a loyal and important companion to the Nameless one who had lost his way, although admittedly I don't think Dakon will be appearing in Baldur's Gate 3. As always, thanks for tuning in, more content to come, and please do subscribe, comment, share, and like, and I will check you out later. Take care.